What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain, and I'd like to welcome you to the 10th episode of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. A big shout out to the new listeners following us from the countries of the Dominican Republic, the Netherlands, and Iraq. I'd also like to welcome the many new listeners from Canada who joined us last week to hear the interview with Steve Langdon. I hope you all become regular listeners and invite your friends to listen. Today's episode is called Gaslighting in Addiction. Okay, let's start with the origin and definition of gaslighting. The term goes back to a play from the late 1930s and the movie made from that play in the early 1940s. It portrayed a husband dimming the gas lights in his home in order to manipulate his wife's perception of reality. He did this as he would go up into the attic searching for jewelry of a former wife that he murdered. And then he would lie to his wife about the lights being dim and lie about noises coming from the attic that he had her convinced was sealed off. You see, gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse and manipulation. It is when someone sows seeds of doubt in a targeted individual, causing the victim to doubt his or her own perceptions, judgments, memories, and even their sanity. In addiction, it is often a case of manipulation by the addict to control his situation, his relationships, and his household. It creates doubt and confusion in the family and loved ones of the addicts, and ultimately, the blame shifting that takes place is so effective that the victims start to blame themselves for what they are thinking and feeling. The addict wins when their family begins to agree that the addict is under control and not really doing anything wrong. This allows the addict to continue their behavior and their use without interference from the people who honestly are trying to help them. Here is an anonymous quote that I feel explains what is behind the gaslighting of addicts very well. They don't lie to you because the truth will hurt your feelings. They lie to you because the truth might provoke you to make the choices that won't serve their interests. Did you get that? Addicts are not concerned about whether or not they hurt your feelings. Addicts are focused on and driven by their own self-interests and self-gratification, and they lie to you in order to control and manipulate the choices you make. Let me paint you a classic example of a husband addicted to alcohol. An addict knows the things to say or do that will trigger the people that they are living with. So the husband, in this scenario, intentionally starts an argument with his wife and then keeps escalating the argument until they are yelling at each other, and then he can slam the door as he leaves the house, knowing the whole time that he can now go out and drink and his wife will not be waiting up for him. And she won't ask where he's been whenever he returns. He could be gone all night or simply return in the middle of the night and curl up on the couch to sleep. Ultimately, his wife and other friends and family members become codependent enablers of the addict as they keep silent about their concerns in order to avoid arguments. These marriages, relationships, and friendships in addiction are filled with many, many negative emotions and negative actions. Some of these are manipulation, misdirection, contradiction, deception, deflection, denial, rationalization, minimization, and lies. Each of these actions by the addict creates another layer of betrayal, which widens the gap of trust that has been broken. Sir Walter Scott, a British novelist, poet, and historian, wrote, "Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive." I must confess, I thought the quote was, "What a wicked web we weave," because that's what my mother always said to me. The tangled webs we weave in the dishonesty of addiction create problems and complications which we cannot control or undo. Trust is easily broken and extremely difficult to rebuild. So, how do we restore trust? How do we rebuild the bridges that we have burned down in our addiction? What can we do with our feelings that everyone is suspicious of us and waiting for us to make a mistake rather than seeing the progress that we've made? This stress and anxiety alone in addicts can cause us to relapse. So make sure you, as the addict in recovery, make sure that you are dealing with your own stress first. Then begin the work of rebuilding trust. Don't expect trust to be gained instantly or even quickly. You got that? The first thing to keep in mind, don't expect trust to be gained instantly or even quickly. Set your expectations based on reality. This will take time. The wound and wounds that you put on other people were over years and some over decades, and it will take time for those wounds to heal and trust to be restored. Secondly, work steps 8 and 9 of the 12 steps with your sponsor so that you can make amends with those you have wounded in a positive and restorative manner. Don't jump in too quickly to just go tell everyone you're sorry without even knowing what you're sorry for. That you just want to run off and say, "Oh, I'm sorry I was an addict. Oh, I'm sorry I stole money off of you." It's important that when we make amends, we touch the feelings of pain that we caused in our victims so that healing and restoration can begin in them when we have genuine sorrow. Thirdly, walk in truth. In the book of 3 John, chapter 1, verse 4, John writes, "I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth." Walking in truth is active, not passive. Don't wait for someone to ask you to explain where you have been or what you were doing. Be open and forthcoming before you must explain your actions. Call ahead if you will be home late. Walking in truth also involves walking in love. Start becoming a supporter and an encourager of those that you have beaten down emotionally in your addiction. Walking in truth becomes the foundation, the very cornerstone for true fellowship and friendship. Friendship is built on two things: trust and respect. Let me repeat that. Friendship is built on two things: trust and respect. Make truth one of your core values. As you walk in truth, take your time. You will see trust growing in those who have been conditioned to doubt everything you said while you were active in your addiction. American author Roy T. Bennett said, "Consistency is the true foundation of trust. Either keep your promises or do not make them." Do you remember the number of broken promises you made in your addiction? Do you remember how many times you said, "I'm clean now and I'm never going back to that again"? Do you remember all of the lies? Do you remember all of the broken hearts? Consistency, as Roy Bennett said, is the true foundation of trust. Either keep your promises or do not make them. We need to reach a place where we can consistently walk in the truth and keep our promises. So, in walking in the truth, we begin to live in the opposite of our former lifestyle. The word in the thesaurus for opposite is antonym. I'm going to give you a list of antonyms for deception so you can have some character values and character traits that would describe walking in truth. They include faithfulness, forthrightness, honesty, loyalty, sincerity, openness, frankness, honor, trustworthiness, and uprightness. If you want to begin to bring healing to others that you have wounded with your gaslighting and addiction, make a list of each of these words and write down how you can walk in every relationship by living out this walk of truth through those words. Write it down for not just your loved ones, but friends and family, co-workers, everyone you meet. Make a post-it note and add it to your man in the mirror reminders that says, "No more gaslighting, walk in truth." Thanks for listening. Please follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast link with 2 or 3 people this week. Keep sending your feedback, and if you would like to be part of a weekly Zoom meeting on addiction and recovery, contact me by email at davidfroma2d@gmail.com or by Instagram at davidfroma2d. Tune in next week for our next episode of the A to D From Addict to Disciple podcast.